Hello, everybody. My name is Maria Jerome Gonzalez, and I am making a podcast for a course I'm currently taking my senior year of college, which is um, Unearthing and Earthing, Honors Spanish 470. And for this podcast, I will be focusing on Pompeii and the destruction that happened there, the remains that are there today, and all about that in connection to my course. Um, I'm a student at Hood College in Frederick, Maryland, and this is my guest.
Hi, I'm Thomas Bond. I am a college student at McDaniel.
McDaniel College. Yep. All right. Um, so if anybody doesn't know, Pompeii is or was a city in south of ancient Rome and along the coast of Italy. And it was also shadowed by Mount Vesuvius, which is an active volcano. Um, so this city was beautiful, but unfortunately, Mount Vesuvius, since it was a active volcano, it erupted, and the eruption took place in 79 AD. Um, and about 2,000 people died in the city. But it wasn't only Pompeii, it was also neighboring areas that unfortunately took some damage, but Pompeii took it the worst. Um, and years later, the city was discovered by explorers in 1748, and um, Mount Vesuvius has not erupted since 1944. So it erupted 79 AD, and then it erupted again 1944, and it has not erupted since. Um, However, it could erupt any day now. As we know it, it's still active. So, yeah. Pompeii was said to be a home by the most distinguished citizens of the Roman Empire. And 16,000 people in Pompeii died by the eruption, like I said, because there was only, not Pompeii, but it was only it was neighboring areas as well, like Her- Herculaneum and other towns. I'm sorry if I butcher these names, but it's actually like interesting because it's named after like Hercules. So Herculaneum and other towns in the area got affected by the eruption. Um, when I was researching for this topic, I came across Quora, which is also like it's kind of like Reddit, but Quora is like where you can put questions and people will kind of answer you. Um, and I found it interesting, and some people might not say that this is like a good source, but I think it was because when I was reading the comments, there was some questions that say like I would ask, and like professors from universities, professionals, and all that were answering those people. So I was like, you know what? This might actually be a good source. So with that research, I came up with a question because I was, in taking all this information, I was getting more and more intrigued. And what if I told you that the statues of people in Pompeii aren't real? Like, I don't know if you've ever come across like pictures of Pompeii and like the destruction, and you see like people in like positions and they look like statues, right? You seen those?
Mm-hmm.
Well, what if I told you they weren't real? Well, that's the first question that, I had. And with that being said, I'm going to read some of these to you from Quora, and you can even, um, you know, take a look yourself. So, I'm gonna insert some pictures so you guys can see them as well, so you guys can see what I mean by statues. And they're really, insert discretion if you guys are, sensitive to people in certain positions, to death, to any of that. I'm inserting a discretion now. You guys can, click ahead in the podcast, or even take a break from the whole podcast if this is not your type of topic, and take a break. So yeah, but I will insert some pictures so you guys can see what I mean. Um, and these are the pictures that I'm talking about.
Mm. They're fake.
Well, that's what I was thinking, right? But when I started looking into these, I said, I started learning because I was like, what do you mean they're not real? So I kind of got twisted
Mm-hmm.
into everything. The first thing that I looked at in this was, has any naturally preserved body found in Pompeii ever been cracked open to be examined?
Mm-hmm.
So when I first thought about these statues, I was like, wait a minute, are they, are they not real? Or like, are they the remains of people? What are they? And so whenever I read this first part, I was like, wait a minute, what do you mean they're not real? It said, this man, a man named Floyd A., the associate professor of anthropology from 2001 to present day in the Political Science and History Texas Women's University. All right, he's legit. He said, the bodies at Pompeii are not actually bodies.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when I was like, wait a minute, are they fake? Right? That's where this whole question came from. And he said, they are simply plaster that archaeologists used to fill the holes where the bodies used to be.
Mm-hmm.
And I just started getting even more questions. What do you mean holes? What do you mean where the holes used to be? So it says, when Vesuvius erupted, it covered Pompeii and nearby Herculaneum, Herculaneum in fine-grained ash made of pumice. Most of the people died from lack of oxygen as the heavy volcanic gases displaced the air, which we will look into more later and more in depth. Soon after, ash covered the bodies and hardened into a natural cement. The bodies decayed beneath the ash, leaving hollow spaces
Mm-hmm.
behind. So what happened is, let me paint a picture to make it clear. What happened is, the volcano erupted, they got covered in all this ash. And the people, decomposition takes about like a couple days. It starts really fast.
Mm-hmm.
So you can think about a human corpse, laying down or whatever position they were in. They were already dead because of the lack of oxygen. And so that's why you see different positions of people, because they died in the way that they either were, in the way that they were lacking oxygen, etc. So they died like that. They're covered like natural cement, like actual statues. But when these explorers in 1748 found Pompeii again, there was only holes in the ground. There wasn't those cement statues from like the time that it had just happened. It
Mm-hmm.
was just holes, because beneath the cement and everything, the bodies had decomposed and they had melted into the ground.
Mm.
Because that's what bodies do.
Yeah.
Because it's all that liquid and stuff. So melted into the ground, and so that's why you see, insert picture. You see this right there. That's
Mm-hmm.
what they found. However, the interesting part about all this, and this is when I was like, okay, why do they have statues now? Because they do. And how did they do that? Well, the whole way that they were able to research this place and be able to find not only how they died, the positions that they were in, what they did is archaeologists poured like a cement mixture inside the holes to be able to cover the bones and encapsulate the bones in whatever position or posture or anything that these people were in. The cement covered the bones, so that's how they were able to preserve the bones and then be able to dig around the bones once the cement had already dried, so that they could not only preserve the bones but also see the position that these people were in. Are you getting
Hmm.
it? Yeah. So just this is what it would look like. Insert picture. When they were done digging around, that's what it would look like when they poured the cement in, dug around the body.
It reminds me of when people do leading. I don't know if you've ever heard of that. It's where they take a silhouette of something, they pour molten lead into a that kettle of silhouette, and then when it's done, you take the silhouette off, and the lead has that shape of what it is.
Yeah, so it's kind of like molding,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's like molding.
Instead of I guess going inside something, it kind of goes into that
Yeah, it
hole,
goes into the hole and creates
but
that
it
shape
it
of
kind
the.
of just sticks to the
Mhm.
bone remains, which is interesting because yeah. So as archaeologists uncover these hollow spaces, they pour in plaster. That's what it is, a
Mm.
mixture, which fills the hole, and then once the plaster hardens, they excavate the ash from around the cast to reveal the shape of the body. That is why some of them are partially covered. So for example, this is insert the picture. This is an example of what it would be like. So
Mm.
when they poured in the plaster in this guy, the plaster could only get to so much. Um,
It left the
yeah,
skull open there.
yeah. So it left the skull open, and then when they excavated it out, they found out that yeah. So, but then beneath the plaster, there's nothing but bones, and these are often collapsed into a pile at the bottom of the hole. Um,
It's kind of cool to think that the body, like the lava went over top the bodies and still created that the shape of the body, and like all they did was put like the cement into it, which is smart because then they can keep the bones for a very long time
oh, and
instead of.
listen, the only reason why these bones were even discovered is because they were covered by this ash.
Yeah.
If you don't know any, excuse me, if you don't know anything about bones, what happens, and I just recently figured this out, by the way. Kudos to my professor, Dr. Casas, and the recent visit that we took to the African American cemetery in Hagerstown, Maryland, halfway. Um, I learned a lot about like what bodies are like in actual cemeteries and like the decomposition of those bodies. Um, because to me, I always thought, okay, in the movies, you always see like the coffin there forever and then the bones just remaining inside the coffin. Turns out wooden coffins don't last forever. They disintegrate,
Hmm.
and so do bones.
Eventually, this disintegration comes up and
Yeah, so
just
eventually it's literally all
just a
you have
pile of
left
dirt.
in yeah, all
That's
you
all it
have
is.
left is a pile of dirt or
With
ashes
with
or
remains of the bones in the coffin,
not
but
even
it's like
bones.
but it's like the ash of them,
Yeah, all you have left
the decomposed of the bones and that.
all you have left is like buttons
Hmm. And
of
like
their
the
clothing.
metals and
Yeah.
like stuff like that of like the hatches and stuff.
Yeah. That's why
It's
even
weird.
tombstones don't make it most of the time.
Most of the time, if people don't take care of them,
Erosion.
they erode. And
Yep.
then if you would go to like an old cemetery, you'll find ones that's broken, split in half because the earth, it does its thing.
Yeah, and we can insert pictures of that as well,
Yeah.
or put some in the bottom
Hmm.
links below to show you guys what those tombstones can look like at that cemetery. If you guys are local, you can go visit. They really actually love people visiting and learning about it, and it's really just such an interesting topic. And I thought I'd connect it to this because we're talking about remains and corpses and just decomposition in general and
Hmm.
how that, so with that being said, I also learned about I guess the fascinating part of ash and how it is because I'm currently taking an anthropology course as well. I'm intro into anthropology, which, interesting enough, my professor for my anthropology course is also the archaeologist that helped find and fund and help the African American Museum. So it's all like really full circle. So if he does watch this, then he'll know that I've made these connections. But when we were learning about like evolution of primates to humans, to the modern day humans, we learned about the, I think it was the Homo erectus, or possibly the ones that came before Homo
Mhm.
erectus. Um, I don't have my notes in front of me, so I apologize. But they they were making like not a pilgrimage, but they were like making a travel across land where there was an active volcano that had just erupted, and when they passed through the recent ash that was just there, they made footsteps.
Mhm.
And so years and years later, archaeologists went to that spot
Found them footsteps.
and found those footsteps. And people are like, how could those footsteps have been there for so long? Because
Hmm.
ash does that. And
It's kind of like a clay. Like clay does
like
the
a
same thing. It's
preservation
like,
clay.
yeah, it's like a clay. If you ever dig in the ground and make like a clay structure and put it on the ground, it won't decompose. It stays there because it's like a type of dirt, I guess. I mean, I'm not really profound in it, but it's pretty cool to think about.
Yeah. And so that's why I was like, wait a minute, that answers the question, like, how could these bones have been preserved for
Hmm.
so long? Because this happened in 79 AD.
Yeah, which is long time ago.
It's 2025.
Yeah,
Like, that's crazy.
it's
These bones should have been dirt.
it's crazy how the ash can like protect it. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? It protects the silhouette, the bones, the everything, just
Yeah,
all,
and
which
these
is kind of
people were
crazy.
so ingenious to, like,
Exactly.
figure out a way to not,
I
hurt these people.
yeah.
Um,
I mean, that brings a question for me when it
okay.
comes to like the Pompeii. Is it wrong for us to go ahead and fill them and make that them structures?
See, that is
It's a
a
very
really good question. And
because we're basically taking what we say is graves and making
mhm,
their graves into them again, but not who they actually are.
mhm.
So
Yeah, this is the question, right? I mean, I'm battling with the same question. I mean, being in this course, earthing and unearthing, I've learned a lot about like the ethics of just, remains, excavating, even the cemetery that we were just at. Like, I have a funny thing about stepping over people's graves. So being in that cemetery kind of made me nervous,
mhm,
because I didn't know. Nobody knows where these people's graves are. This cemetery was left alone for a couple years, and the land was sold off to home builders, and now there's homes on top of the the remains, and people's graves that are unmarked. And this brings a lot of question into ethics, like, is this okay? And a lot of people look at it this way. Those people, like we were just talking about before, they're dirt now. Those people are dirt. And realistically, their bodies, their souls, they're not there anymore. So, in a spiritual sense, hopefully they're in a better place. So you can look at it this way and make yourself feel
yeah,
better. However, what you were talking about is kind of displaying these people
yeah,
to,
which
like,
kind of takes the thought of who they were and kind of like putting it out to the public. And I get it. Like in the end of the day, it's for people to see the tragic.
mhm,
It's for the people to be remembered. So like a
mhm,
tombstone, what you make is it's the same thing. It's a tombstone. You make it for the
yeah,
person to be remembered. But this is not only a tombstone. This is their bodies that we're talking
yeah,
about, which is sad. But it's like you could look at it two ways. One, remembrance, which is basically what everybody wants. Everybody wants to be remembered,
Mm-hmm.
but at the same time, disturbance. Like, what if you're disturbing their peace
Yeah.
and rest? So,
Yeah.
I mean, it's either way. It's just a sad question, but it's also debatable.
Yeah. The problem with these, basically, really ancient occurrences that happened, is that one, there may not be a lot of descendants left.
Mm-hmm.
So there may not be a lot of people that really have a direct connection to these people that they can, stand up for them and be like, oh, I'm going to go look at my, family members. So it's left up to the people that, like
Find
the
them.
archaeologists and the
Yeah.
people that find them, and all the ethics that entails.
Mm-hmm.
And since these people aren't alive, it's unfortunate that they don't really get a say,
Yeah.
and for people that find them, it's just kind of fascinating to learn a part of history that wasn't known before, right? But this brings into another, connection that I actually learned in class. It was about mummies, and we do the same thing with mummies. We found mummies, and why is it called mummies? I have a big problem with that lately. I have a big problem with that because a lot of people, even apparently, even the Egyptian people refer to them as mummies, but those are people. Those mummies are people.
Well, from what I know, it's not a big area that I'm acknowledged with, but I will say that mummies, the reason they call it mummies is because one, it was the fact that they wrapped them in cloth because it's kind of like the same thing. They wanted to preserve the bodies. Um, and they did that because it was either king's guards, kings, like, people that would be remembered, family of the king's heirlooms, people like that. And that's why, like, most of the time in like the Egypt temples and stuff like that, you'll find where people say mummies live, or mummies be held, because it's most of the time where the ancient Egypt people would put their, like, heirlooms of family members, brothers, sisters, stuff like that that pass away. um and it's just the way that they called it. Like, in paintings they have it written out. And I mean, it's a good question. Why do they call them mummies?
Yeah,
What is the purpose of that?
yeah.
But at the same time, if someone of that culture or someone of that belief says that, you can't go against it. You know what I mean? So if someone says, like, an ancient Egypt person will come up and be like, "Hey, that's a mummy," you can't really go against it because
Oh,
that's
of course.
that's their
Yeah.
culture, quote unquote.
I think the reason might be, and if you want to look into this, we had a whole group present, like a whole class period on this, and it was really, really interesting. They talked about like the significance of burial between the Egyptians. There was so many components that Egyptian people would look at and call like, the whole reason why they put all their organs in like a jar
Oh yeah,
beside the, and just like the passage from life to death is really meaningful to them. So if you want to look into that, I encourage you to. It's really good. But you know moving on from this topic,
yeah.
it's the same thing. Like we go to museums and stare at mummies and think this is really cool, but it's the same thing that Pompeii.
Yeah,
We're looking at remains of people, and you know, it's hard because you're like desensitized with you're looking at a corpse, and since it looks different, you're like, oh, this is really cool. But and it is in a way, but it's bittersweet,
yeah.
and this is like an ethical dilemma, I guess. And
I think it's all about perspective when it comes to that, and that's something that, if you don't want to see it, don't see it. You know what I mean? Don't go to Pompeii. Don't go and try to reach out to that side of, like, the world. But if you do want to be seeing it, if you want to, like, if you have an interest in it, then go look at it. Take your time and see what
Mhm.
they see the history because it's really cool. I've pictures that I've seen. I mean, it's sad, but it's really cool.
Yeah. I mean, that's why everybody, I mean, the people that know about Pompeii, I think the first time I ever like found out about Pompeii was the Magic Treehouse
Yeah,
books.
yeah.
Is it if anybody is familiar with the Magic Treehouse books, feel free to leave a comment or talk to me about that because I would love to have a whole conversation. I mean, that was like back in my childhood,
Yeah,
like education, enrichment. And so that's where I first read about Pompeii, and I was just fascinated. I was like, that's crazy. The destruction that a volcano can do, and we don't really hear about that very much now.
I think it's awesome that I mean not awesome, more of like scary, but that the volcano can still erupt.
Oh,
Like it's like daily basis. Hey,
oh yeah, for
that could
sure.
explode.
And that's with everything. And like,
Yeah,
have you ever heard about Yellowstone
yeah,
Park
yeah, yeah.
and how those, I don't really know what they are, but they could really just
I think they're
explode.
gushers, geysers,
Geysers,
geysers.
yeah.
I
Those
didn't know the word, so I guess.
I heard that those could literally end like half the world
Yeah,
if
I mean,
they exploded. But
it's
that's
yeah, it's
crazy.
big
That's like a
explosions.
different type of fear. I apologize, discretion. If you have that type of fear too,
Yeah, just be
feel
careful.
free to,
Don't go to
yeah,
Yellowstone. Don't go to Pompeii.
don't think about it. Um, yeah. Another question that came to my mind when I was doing this research is how bad was the impact of this volcano? Like
Mm,
we can see it, right? But I want to dig deeper. Like how really bad was it? Like can we really pinpoint because we're like, "Oh yeah, volcano exploded." Yeah, that sucks. That's really bad, right?
kind of
But
putting an understatement on that. Like, hey,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, like but
Well,
let's dig into how really bad was it. Like let's I said another follow-up question, is there any way to know what actually killed the people specifically? Because some people argue that it was the volcano exploding.
well, I mean, we kind of touched base on this a little bit already. It was the air.
Mhm.
The air is what killed most of the people.
Mhm.
It's what suffocated them. They couldn't breathe. I mean, you got to think first off, how hot is that air? Because
Oh
it's
yeah.
coming from a volcano,
Mhm.
something that's going to be very hot, like burning to the touch, and like so you're breathing all that hot air and plus the ash, plus then you have to think about what's coming after that. I mean, I think what happened was, realistically, they suffocated, they died. The volcano didn't kill many, it just covered them.
Mhm. Um I during my research I found this really good source. It in short it's called journals.plos.org, and you know that when you find org, it's a good
Yeah, it's a good
source.
source.
But apart from this, it was just really examining the source and all that. It really dug deep into um, just deeper evidence about everything that happened, why it happened, even the people. I
Mm,
mean, I got numbers from all the people that passed away here. Um,
it's crazy.
and it says the title is Lethal Thermal Impact at Periphery of Pyroclastic Surges. Very complicated words. I apologize. Some of these words I do not understand. But I'm in college, so I try my best to try to figure myself out. And this says evidences at Pompeii. So what these people did is basically conduct a research on what happened and kind of put into perspective what actually happened that day, how fast the lava fell down, how hot it was, all those things. And then they put into perspective all the people that passed away, why they must have passed away. And it's just really fascinating. I mean, not in a bad
Yeah,
way,
yeah,
but
it's
it's just fascinating how they could do this to educate people. Um, so, another question to visit later, what could the last moment of these people look like? Because, when we hear Pompeii, we're like, okay, a volcano exploded, erupted, and we just think of people running away, right? Running away from the explosion, trying to get to their loved ones, trying to flee, but then, basically getting stopped by the lava or the smoke, and maybe stopping right then and there,
Yeah,
right?
it's kind of something to think about. Most of them accepted that they were going to die.
Yeah.
I think most of them did accept it because they knew how close they were to it, and especially like knowing how fast it was, like the time that it took. I think that's a big part
Yeah.
because if they knew that there was nothing they could do, running wasn't going to be an option. Most of them just grabbed their loved ones and
Yeah. So I
said
actually
a prayer.
found a really fascinating picture, which I will insert here. And this was probably the most important picture of this whole podcast, to me. Um, it was the picture from above of Mount Vesuvius erupting. And
Hmm.
just the extent of this eruption, um, that these people conducted.
Wow, that's it's a long ways too. It's like
Yeah.
the ones that's in the red zone. I mean, you guys will be able to see it.
Oh, yeah. Well,
Like
you'll be able to see
like the
it.
ones that's in the red zone, I feel very bad for. But the ones that's on the outside, they didn't even expect it. It kind of just happened.
Yeah, so here it says, um, we calculated that in Herculaneum, Oplontis, and Pompeii, which were the neighboring areas in Pompeii, um, that the PDC, which is what they called pyroclastic surge cloud, or what
Mm.
they just the elements of the volcano eruption is what they called PDC, advanced with average density of 10 5e 1.5 kg m3, which you guys, if you guys know what that is, then that's crazy. I assume it's really really bad. As thick as 60 25 18 meters with velocity of CA 45, 28, 29 ms respectively. Um, Basically, the velocity and at the vent of 50 divided by 100 ms, front thickness of 30 divided by 130, and density. So if you guys make these calculations,
I mean, it's enough to strangle somebody
oh,
while they're just standing
it's
there.
just really bad.
It's like enough to just gas their lungs out and kill them.
And it says these results indicate that the pyroclastic surge advanced at a quite dilute, turbulent, poorly energetic, deflating cloud and emplaced suddenly, also led by town buildings and walls and trench barrier effects. Such behaviors account for the lack of evidence of mechanical impact on structures. And what this is basically saying is that some deaths might not even have been because of the lack of oxygen, or because of the lava touching your feet or falling directly on you. It was also buildings.
Mm.
These buildings, if somebody was inside a building, it collapsed on top of them. Yeah. So they conducted an experiment, and it said in order to recognize the effects of people on S4 surge, we analyzed the human victim remains from Pompeii at the archaeological site. Um, Here, with the lippy bed, were found 394 skeletons of victims of the early fallout eruptive vase, 90% of whom died within buildings,
Mm.
probably due to the roof and floor collapse. Like I said, deposits of later S4 surge preserve the remains of 650 victims heretofore supposed to have died by ash suffocation.
Mm.
So you gotta think, if they're talking about S4 surge, like the early, you know, with these buildings collapsing on top of people, and then deposits of later S4 surge, that means that there was like probably waves.
Mm. Yeah.
We studied the body postures of 93 well preserved plaster casts, what we talked about in the beginning, of the surge victims at Pompeii. For comparison, we also examined 37 additional corpses of surge fatalities at the other close by areas. A Roman seaside suburban site located 2 kilometers west northwest of Pompeii, and 78 skeletons unearthed at Hark I'm just gonna say Hercules Town, um, Hercules Place. The body postures assumed at the time of PDC emplacements were assessed by both direct analysis of casts and caused by mechanical impact, which is the houses, heat exposure, and dusty gas inhalation in victims found inside as well as outside buildings. So right here we know that 3 causes of death. Mechanical, which means like inside building collapse, floor falling apart, um, heat exposure, which means it was just so hot they probably burned to death, and 3, gas inhalation.
Oh.
Um, And obviously, I will put the links to all of this if you guys want to take a look, because this is a lot of information. I couldn't possibly put it all detailed in this podcast, but it's just really interesting. These people have put in like PowerPoint things, PDFs of you for you to look exactly like the types and occurrences of postures direct detected in all of the victims, which is really just crazy to me, in all the different places. But back to the question, what could the last moment of these people look like? Um, Most of the groups of victims displayed a variety of postures that can be arranged as primary postures assumed at the time of death or postpartum postures. Um, And here's the different postures, which is just fascinating. Like these people had the different types of postures, and I can show you some pictures. Discretion advised. These pictures can be very emotional. If you guys can't handle that, please take a break, or move forward.
Oh. It was very sad.
Yeah.
The first one is what
Yeah. The
exhibit A
first
is
one's
what's
very.
really like.
Yeah. So the primary postures include lifelike stance, victims that appear in suspended action,
Oh.
which this would be literally exactly what they were doing at the time of death. Sleep-like stance, victims laying on their back on the right or left side in an apparent relaxed posture. Impact-like stance, victims showing corpse displacement and or rupture of body elements. And the secondary postures include, and these first 3 were the ones that were most found the most. The secondary is limb contraction stance, imperflection. Oh, you know that one. Imperflection, right?
Mm-hmm.
Kinesiology major over here. On hands and feet. And, oh, this one's going to be hard. Pugilistic attitude stance.
Mm.
Limb flexures that result from dehydration and shortening of tendons and muscles. Can you dumb it down for us a little bit, sir? If you can.
Um,
The first one was imperflection of hands and feet.
imperfection, right? Imperfection. So it's like falling down on your knees or like trying to get up. That type. It's like a
Oh
pushing
yes,
up
and that's
situation.
that's what it is.
Yes, it's like them trying to get up, pushing off, standing up.
Mm,
That's in the picture as you see.
mhm.
And then the second one was what? The
Uh,
oh, by the
pugilistic,
can I see the picture of it?
pugilistic attitude.
So that one is the
Probably
C.
these.
That is C.
Yeah.
So it's them. So the one relaxation is
Oh,
the
these are
D.
the sleep like.
Yeah, they're
I'm
the
pretty
sleep
sure it's
ones.
these.
The ones is like yeah.
Yeah.
F is the
Yeah, 2F right there.
proliferation. Yeah, that's the big
So
one.
it's like
It's like it's
extending.
because they're trying to either grab something
Oh,
or
like
like
they can't.
grabbing something, trying to grab like pull themselves up and then getting stuck in that position.
Yeah. That's
Like maybe if they were trying to grab something off the shelf or something like that, and then boom, right into it.
yeah.
Yeah.
And the pictures that we're going to show, they will be, described in
Yeah.
the journal
Yeah,
itself.
if you wanna see more, I mean, I can't think it off the top of my head because I'm still a junior in college, still learning these different phrases and stuff like that. But it'll be in the article. So if you guys want to know more about the positions and all that, it'll be linked down below.
Yes. The PDC, like I was saying before, it stands for Pyroclastic Density Currents, which basically means that this eruption came in currents,
Mm.
and different, pyroclastic density currents are turbulent hot mixtures of fine ash and gas that flow down volcano slopes.
Uh-huh.
You can just imagine, like, fine ash, gas, and hot mixture.
Mm.
It's just a recipe for,
Disaster.
yeah. Um, and
Definitely.
like we said before, um, the density was 2 divided by 50 kg, m3 velocity, 2 times 10. If you guys know what that is, you just, you know,
Leave a comment and let us know because
yeah.
it would
But
be,
I just know that it's bad.
I mean, it
Um,
had to be.
based on the picture that you guys saw, yeah. And ultimately, according to this journal, they figured out based on their experiments that ultimately the primary cause of death was heat.
Mm.
Um,
But okay, that's a good question. Was it the heat from the air or heat from the lava? Because I mean, the air had to be really hot. It's
I'm
coming from the
pretty
lava.
sure it was the air.
Yeah, because most of them died from the air.
It,
That's like the lungs collapsing. Like I
oh
said
yeah,
before, lungs
it
collapsing,
was the
them
heat
breathing
of
in.
the air. Cause just think about it. The heat of the air made the buildings collapse. And not only the air, but if you see like lava coming down,
I
really
mean,
hot lava, it could melt a building.
it did.
Yeah.
It's probably just like you gotta think. It's probably just like water. It hits it like water. It's moving like water. It's
Oh,
not. It's. I mean, it came out of a very hot
oh
substance coming
yeah.
up fast. It's like
Just
it's an explosion. So something that's
overall, that's what they came up with. It was heat.
yeah.
And I can,
So
so discussion. Our overall results indicate that S4 pyroclastic surge crossed Pompeii as a dilute, poorly energetic dust gas cloud and then placed suddenly in response to horizontal velocity decay and turbulence dumping.
mm,
Approaching its termination just next to the southern town walls, due to low density and velocity, its dynamic overpressure was low, with negligible effects on the structures and people. The PDC had a concentration of inhalable ash particles greater than 100 microns. In order, the lower values commonly observed at the head of dilute PDCs, and temperature range, oh, get ready for this one. Temperature range between 250 to 600 degrees Celsius. Let's transfer that to
Fahrenheit.
Fahrenheit.
I mean, you gotta think. I'm correct. I think 30 degrees Celsius is like very cold.
Oh my god.
How hot?
Uh, yeah, why don't you read that out? Because I can't. Highest? Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
The highest. So it's
Oh, it's still
1,000.
bad.
It's I mean it's still very bad. 600 degrees Celsius is 1,100. Wait,
Yeah.
1,112 degrees Fahrenheit, which is very hot. I mean,
I
that's
mean,
sun.
humans could die or have a heat
I
stroke
think
at 100
I,
degrees Fahrenheit.
I think if you go over 110, you're high
Your
risk
brain
of
starts to melt, right?
exactly your brain, your high risk
Yeah.
of defunction.
If you have a fever of 104, you could die
Yes,
of a stroke.
of a stroke, and that is quadruple that.
Oh,
I mean, the 400 is not going to be.
yeah. Well,
It's not
you can see why these people ended
burn
up
and
saying that the ultimate result
was heat.
was heat.
Yeah, I mean, and that was air. That
Hmm.
was air. Think about it. That's like if
temperature.
that,
Yeah.
yeah, that's like going outside on a very hot day, and the sun gets closer and closer
You're
to you.
just
You're
disintegrating right there.
disintegrating right then and there. Like,
These values are consistent with pyroclastic surge temperatures computed with the Marjo zone of PDCs derived from general numerical modeling of plane and column collapse.
that is insane, and it's just, to me, it's thinking about how
And
hot
and
that is.
let's just keep in mind this was just an experiment.
Yeah, that's crazy. To me, that's crazy.
So it could
I
have
wouldn't
been
want that.
worse.
I would not want that to erupt again and be anywhere near it.
It says here, finally, contrary to previous hypotheses, our findings based on interdisciplinary volcanical and bioanthropological study of deposits and victims of 79 AD Plinian eruption reveal that even at an extreme periphery of the S4 surge, neither asphyxia nor impact force, but heat caused the deaths.
Yeah, it's insane.
Yeah. The pyroclastic cloud retained its high temperature, thus being the main cause of instantaneous mortality for the Vesuvius area inhabitants, including people who were sheltered within buildings as far as in Pompeii. Definitely a group of indoor victims found at Murugine within the S4 PDC limit about half-kilometer southeast of Pompeii walls suggests that even an extremely short exposure to the pyroclastic surge in the order of seconds to a few tenths of seconds was lethal.
I think it's crazy because you sit there and, like, the overview of the volcano, you can see that outskirt of that was that was still 400 degrees. You're still feeling that at that 400 degrees Celsius. Sorry, you're still feeling that on the outside. It's insane.
Yeah.
But
As of today, like we said, Mount Vesuvius has not erupted since 1944, but it's still one of the most dangerous volcanoes in the world.
I believe it.
Experts believe that another catastrophic eruption is due any day. An almost unfathomable catastrophe since how many people can you guess how many people live around there today?
Okay. Well, we know how many people died in the last one. Roughly
16,000 people.
16,000. I'm gonna say triple that. I'm gonna say over 3,200 people. Or no,
Okay,
32.
okay.
I think it's gonna be roughly
3,200 people, that's like 3
3,200 people.
million? 3,000.
I think it's gonna. How much you said it was?
16,000. That would
Oh,
be
16. Okay, then
like
I'm gonna think
32,000.
32,000. Sorry.
Well, no, you were not even close. Almost 3 million people live within 20 miles of the volcano's crater today.
And now, why would you do that? That's just like a recipe for, like, you're just asking to be dead. Like, you're asking to die from a volcano.
Well,
I wouldn't.
honestly, people
They get that thrill of waking up not dead.
people love beautiful places, and I'm sure
Yeah,
that place is beautiful.
I'm sure it's beautiful, but is it worth, like,
I mean,
being roasted, turning into chicken? Like,
just the uncertainty of when it's, oh, we don't know when it's gonna happen. I guess that some people feel safe in that.
I don't think I could step foot in that area because, you know, I don't want to be turned into a roasted piece of meat. Like, to be honest, I don't. Knowing that, if I could go to sleep and I'm not gonna wake up the next morning, like, everybody does that. Everybody goes to sleep every single day, not knowing if you're gonna wake up.
But you're
But
gonna
you're
have
going
a
to be
volcano.
close.
You
You're
have
gonna
a
have higher
volcano in your
chance of not.
backyard.
Like, I'm
Yeah.
not. If that's yeah, no. 3 million.
3 million.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Jeez, that's, to me. Oh wow. Oh wow.
Yeah.
That's a history. That's going in the history books
If it
if it explodes
erupts again,
and hurts
yeah.
that many.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
that's history. Like, I mean, you think
They
of
probably
think of
call it.
Pompeii now.
They probably call it Pompeii number 2.
No, it's gonna be worse. It's gonna be Pompeii's disaster or something like that. It's
Pompeii to be continued. Oh
yeah.
well, you know
Oh wow,
what?
that's
We
crazy.
hope that doesn't happen.
Oh
Um,
geez, that's wild.
well, thank you for tuning in. I hope you learned something.
Yeah, no, I
Did
did.
you learn
I
something?
definitely did.
Yeah,
Three
I
million.
definitely learned something. I mean, this was a really, really enriching research experience. And yeah, I really get excited about these things. And I'm thankful that I'm in this course in college and I get to research stuff like this. And also get to connect it to, everything that I'm learning about right now.
I think we need to do more podcasts. I like learning.
We'll see. All right. Thank you. Bye.